Congratulations, you have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 741 of the Lambcast. I'm your host, Richard Kirkham from Kirkham A Movie A Day. This week, we may only be 9 people, but our entire world is right here in this podcast, and I have no idea how to save it alone. But you know how to save it, and that means that we have to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine, the hybrid X-Men, Avengers, MCU, Fox Universe collection of superhero movies. According to the New York Times, superheroes are not the sure thing that they used to be. DC Studios, part of Warner Brothers, is working on its 4th reboot strategy in 8 years, following disappointments like The Flash, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and Blue Beetle. Sony has struggled with Spider-Man spin-offs like Madam Web and Morbius. The problem is that the movie and television marketplace is awash in characters, and some of those popular ones have already been fully exploited, at least for now. On the other hand, Disney and Marvel are predicting between $195 and $205 million opening domestically for Deadpool and Wolverine, something no one thought was possible for an R-rated picture. So apparently there's some people out there who still want to see a superhero movie. Is Ryan Reynolds the savior of superhero films, or is he just the first carrion eater to feast on the once thriving genre? We've assembled our own team of heroes to discuss the film and its ramifications for the franchises that it simultaneously mocks and salutes. Let's introduce them now. Arriving with the usual perfect 3-point landing, the resident expert on superhero movies, his own superpower is being able to parallel park. Welcome, Bubba Wheat.
I'm still waiting for my movie to be made.
It'll get greenlit, I'm sure. Once they see the numbers on this, they can hardly stand to not jump on the bandwagon. Next up is our big slow-motion action sequence. Who knows if you'll live or die? Jeffrey Lyles will not leave us in suspense for long.
Okay, I'm all set and ready to break the fourth wall, bub.
There will be plenty of fourth wall breaking here, but we will not break the spoiler wall until we warn you people, so don't worry about that. And that's right, the Lambcast brought him back. We're going to make him do this till he's 90, Howard Casner.
Want to do some cocaine? How about Bolivian marching powder? Snowboard? Disco dust?
I think I know all the euphemisms for this, and some that haven't even been mentioned. All right, well, we've got a listless Wade Wilson toiling away in civilian life with his days as the morally flexible mercenary Deadpool behind him. But when his homeworld faces an existential threat, Wade must reluctantly suit up again with an even more reluctant Wolverine. All right, we're going to start with opening thoughts, and we're going to stay spoiler-free for a while anyway. And Jeffrey, you get the honors. What do you think?
I loved it. I had admittedly high hopes. I really enjoyed Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, and despite my issues of he's too tall, I really enjoyed Hugh Jackman's Wolverine as well. And I thought Deadpool 2 was good. I rewatched it right before I went to see Deadpool and Wolverine. But I felt like they were trying a little too hard to be edgy and funny at times. And in this one, I felt like everything they unleashed was perfectly suited, and they just came through with so much off-brand humor, and just nobody was safe from their wrath. And I was laughing so much, and all the little comic book Easter eggs were really fun. And of course, I'm not going to spoil the spoilers, but they were so appropriate, and I laughed, I smiled when I saw them, and I just had a blast with it.
Well, you sound pretty enthusiastic, as does the rest of the world, at least. Bubba Wheat, can you match that enthusiasm, or how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with Jeffrey, because this movie is pretty much right up my alley. As someone that spent 10 years devouring superhero movies for my blog, I recognize the vast majority of the references that they pulled in. I love the meta nature. this was like really geared towards somebody like me, I think. And I like the first two Deadpool movies, and it's just a lot of fun. And I liked some of the the extra character details and just all the extra stuff that they threw in. I thought that both the characters had at least a halfway decent character arc. I liked what they did with the two characters, and it's always great to see Hugh Jackman back. I've seen every one of his movies, for better or worse, and but he never disappoints, and so it's glad to see him back.
Well, he's done 10 movies where he plays Wolverine, and this is one more than he expected to be doing. Obviously, he thought he was done with that, but apparently you just can't quite be finished with it when Ryan Reynolds is on your tail. Howard, how about you? Are you enthusiastic? Do you have reservations? This is an existential film, so, you should have some opinions about it.
I'm both, I would say, semi-enthusiastic, but I also have reservations about it. It's very enjoyable. I think Matthew McFadden and, of course, Ryan Reynolds steal the movie. It has an interesting concept at the core of it, which I thought was extremely clever, very Doctor Who-ish, and in fact, but as you say, also very existential. I think I had some reservations with how the plot is presented at times because I got lost a couple of times. What's interesting is I didn't get bored even when I got a little lost on the plot, so that's sort of a plus to that negative. And also, it's getting a little old. I mean, they even comment on it. It's a meta film about a meta film about a meta film. And I feel like it's finally getting to one meta too many. Because I love meta films, I love postmodernism and post-postmodernism. But I sometimes felt this was going one step too far. And I'm not sure in the end it brings anything that new or exciting to it. In a way, this sounds like I'm really denigrating it, but I don't really mean to. There's this statue in Chicago, a sculpture actually, outside City Hall. And it's actually not City Hall, but Picasso did it. I don't think it's a particularly good statue. And when someone asked why, I said, well, we paid Picasso all this money for this sculpture, and what did we get? We got a Picasso. So I think it's reaching a point, Deadpool is now reaching a point where it's getting diminishing returns. That being said, I really enjoy the movie. I really did have a good time watching it. Deadpool has been perhaps my favorite Marvel comic character in the last few years, along with the Spider-Man and the animated films. So I think that says it all.
Well, that's pretty good. Existential anxiety runs through my heart, because I'm worried that anybody who doesn't give this gushing hyperbole is going to be seen as an ancient, unworthy human being. I enjoyed the movie pretty much, but I find myself very much in the same camp as Howard, feeling a little bit like I've seen this. You're doing it very well, but it doesn't feel fresh anymore. It just feels like more of what I've gotten twice before, which is not a bad thing. It was entertaining enough, but it was not the knockout that I thought the first two movies were, and so I think we've been getting a little bit of diminishing returns with them. The first one I think was great. I'd put it on a very high pedestal. And the second one, nearly as great, but definitely lower down because it did feel familiar. And this one, just because there's more doesn't make it better. However, the stuff that we're getting is still pretty damn entertaining, as long as you are up for all the snarkiness, grotesque visuals, twisted language, and lots of f-bombs here and there. It's it's not for the kids, but I'm sure that there'll be plenty of kids seeing it because, after all, you don't bring in those numbers just with adults going to movies nowadays. So I sound more mixed on it than I was when I was watching it. When I was watching it, I was enjoying it, but after I was thinking about it, I did start to feel a little bit like been there, done that, and I don't really think that that's the way you want to feel about a movie like this. I think you want to feel like, oh, I got to see that again, and I probably will see it again, but not immediately. So we've got a film filled with snarky jokes about fans, characters, studios, movies in general. Howard has already said it. It's meta, meta, meta. Let me ask you, Bubba Wheat, did you have a favorite meta moment in the film?
Um, I think my biggest one was one of the cameos, I think. So I will save
Okay,
that
gotta hold on to
for
that. Yeah.
for later. But yeah, that cameo is just so much fun and so insider baseball that I really appreciated it.
Well, folks who are listening, our spoiler wall will probably go up a little bit sooner because there are a lot of these kinds of things that are going to make up a lot of the film and what we're talking about here. Jeffrey, did you have something that's not going to reveal too much that you could call a favorite meta moment?
Yes. I'm wondering if Bubba Wheat and I are lined up with ours. So mine is okay. I'll be vague. It's kind of a Highlander reference. There can be only one. So that was my favorite, and it just felt like such a winking at the camera on multiple levels, and that Leonardo DiCaprio gif of him pointing at the TV Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I was doing that during that moment because I was like, yes, you're right. So that was me.
Well, Howard, I know that you were a fan of those references. Did you have a meta you said that you thought went too far? Can you pick out one that you thought?
Oh, a meta that went too far.
Yeah, how about you going too far? Yeah, as opposed to a favorite.
Something. I think it would have something a little vague, like Deadpool pointing out that this is not just meta. He even admits this is stretching things too far, that the meta is getting a little tiring. And I think he has a couple of moments where he says, we're being very meta and pointing it out. And when you point out how meta you are, then that's sort of even going a little far. I'm not sure I can say there's a specific moment more than that. If I think about it, maybe I can come up. I do have a favorite meta moment though. But like the others, it does reveal a plot turn, maybe not an important one, but a very funny one.
Yeah, well, I think Zuckerberg should be suing because obviously they have violated the copyright of the phrase meta here. It's all over this film. There's constant in references to the MCU universe, the Fox universe, characters that have come before, characters that are dead and buried but coming back, plot lines that are crossing, the movie studios and they're playing on this. We get Disney gets a little bit of ribbing, and Fox gets plenty of ribbing, and it's so self-referential that unless you are an enthusiastic follower of all of those kinds of stories, you're going to miss a bunch of things that are probably funny, but only funny if you know some of the backstory on that. There's still plenty for everybody else to laugh at and enjoy, but the people who have been deeply immersed in all of the intricacies and machinations behind Sony and Fox and Marvel and Disney getting together on this. And by the way, I'm not even sure, did Paramount get a shout out on any of these things? Because once upon a time they owned the Marvel franchise, and they sold it to Disney. Do you guys remember any Paramount
I feel
reference?
like part of Paramount's contract with Disney is they can't get reference anytime for giving up the biggest cash cow. Because that can be the only reason. But I was like, because I think the last one was Avengers. Like, what did y'all do?
Yeah, it just seems strange that all the other studios came in for some ribbing. My my favorite visual reference to that was in The Void, where much of the movie takes place, and they cross paths with the 20th Century Fox logo buried in the sand, and I just thought that is both funny and sad at the same time. So we get a lot of those kinds of references going on. The plot, I think Howard has alluded to a little bit, is kind of complicated, and sometimes you get lost. I'm not even sure there is a plot. Howard, do you want to tell us what it was that you found a little confounding?
Well, this is a spoiler, so are we?
Well, let me see. How far are we into this? We're, only 15 minutes into it. I said that we would probably have to put up a spoiler wall pretty quickly. So let me just warn everybody who's listening. You have our general thoughts on this movie. The four of us all seem to have liked it. Two of us enthusiastically, two of us with some reservations. Spoiler wall is now coming down because there's a lot of stuff in this movie that we have to talk about that is going to be revealing. And if you don't want to know anything ahead of time, come back and listen to the rest of the show later. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and proceed. Howard, go ahead. Tell us what it was that you were going to talk about.
I would have to start with what I liked about it because it builds on that. And that is the idea, if I understand it correctly, because it is a little complicated, that in each timeline, there is one person that the whole timeline depends on, or the existence of that universe depends on. And once that person dies, then it's only like then the world starts falling apart, and it's only a couple of thousand years. And it's very funny because at first Deadpool thinks it's him, and then they say no, it's Logan. And McFadden has created this machine, and it's even Ryan Reynolds calls it a MacGuffin.
Yes.
That I think is supposed to shorten that timeline even more. And the issue is that I think less than halfway through, I'm going, okay, what was the MacGuffin again? And what is Deadpool's goal? And what do they have to do to stop things and reverse things? And I was sort of going, well, there's all this action, but I'm not sure where the action is leading to because I've forgotten what the MacGuffin is. And then finally, almost toward the end, you see the machine again. And I went, oh, okay. Now I remember that's the MacGuffin. So I think someplace in Act 2, they kind of lose track of what is driving the story. Or they've lost track of how what happens in Act 2 is driving the basic concept.
They kind of lose track of the ticking clock.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is probably my biggest issue with it, structurally and storytelling wise, is that I lose track of what's driving the story. And then at the end, I'm reminded, and once I'm reminded again, then it actually kind of even picked up because now I know what they're fighting over.
Fair enough.
It kind of reminded me of a role-playing game in that sense. So I guess I'm kind of used to the, hey, this is our main plot. Oh, no, now we've got to do this. I mean, the Lord of the Rings had that same kind of deal. Because at first it's everybody, we're on the Mordor, we're dropping off this ring. And then by the end of Fellowship, we're going to go rescue Merry and Pippin. And good luck, Frodo and Sam. And, we got to team up and with the Rohan and do all this stuff. So those branching storylines just kind of play off in these big epics. And, I guess assuming, of course, this is maybe the fourth film that really matters in this multiverse saga. We had Doctor Strange, we had Spider-Man, and Jesus, maybe this is the third one as I'm rattling them off real fast. But I guess Quantum may be right. I can't forget that. So knowing that the big picture is what we've seen now at San Diego, this is just kind of a stop along the way on getting to that ultimate Secret Wars payoff. And with all those Marvel films, they don't always go, yeah, don't forget, we got Thanos in the horizon. It's just kind of, here's your distraction side plot for now until we get back to that main thing.
Jeffrey, you just saw Deadpool 2. You said that you had done that at the beginning of the show. And I was trying to remember, because it certainly seemed like the start of this film, the situation that Deadpool is in, doesn't line up with what I remember the end of Deadpool 2 being. But I didn't rewatch the first two Deadpools before I saw this. So does it make sense, or do they just toss away everything? Because I do remember at one point they said, they make a joke about, Cable didn't, pass the test marketing.
So at the end of Deadpool 2, he's stolen Cable's time device and Teenage Megasonic Warhead, and Yukio fix it. So he doesn't need to have that one charge that Cable had left. So he goes around time and fixes all these problems. And the main thing that he goes back and fixes is saving the majority, I'm assuming, of X-Force. That's why Shatterstar is there. He gets diced into like a wood chipper during Deadpool 2, and he brings back Vanessa. So that's why some of this stuff is lined up. And you probably have to really kind of listen, because he does kind of casually throw it around. But if you haven't watched Deadpool 2, it might be like, wait, what's going on? Especially since the opening doesn't say, so yeah, I did this and I did that. It's just kind of like a, wait, do I remember? So that's what happened there.
Yeah, like I said, I was not that it mattered. Being a little bit lost from the other film didn't seem to make much difference. Recognizing that they are doing crossovers between what were previously distinct franchises is easy to see. Whether or not it makes sense how they get there, that was a little bit problematic. And for example, the agency that McFadden's character works for, Paradox, that it sounds like it ties into the issue that Deadpool has the time variance tool at the end of Deadpool 2. So maybe that would make a little bit more sense for me early on in the film. But I have to agree with Howard. Once we got going, I think once we've established that Wolverine and Deadpool are going to be working together, you kind of forget, okay, now what, ultimately what's the objective here? Because their only objective at one point seems to be to get out of the situation that they've gotten themselves into without necessarily figuring out how to fix whatever it was that put them there in the first place. And so, once again, to enjoy the film, I don't think you have to pay that much attention to what's going on, because in these universes we've got, you've got the multiverse, you've got the time element, you've got the magic stuff going on. They've got some way to solve the problem and get us to the next sequence that doesn't necessarily have to line up with everything else that's gone on in all of the other movies simultaneously. I don't think you could do that. It would just probably take way too long to figure it out. And that's kind of one of the problems that I had. I couldn't really quite tell what the stakes were in this film, other than them, like I said, them trying to get out of the void once they'd gotten stuck in this void area. Go aportion
I mean, I feel like the basic structure of the plot was a big portion of the meta narrative, where each of the timelines are based around the different franchises, like the Fox franchise, the Disney franchise, and he's basically trying to save the Fox timeline in the physical movies. It's like he's trying to save some of the characters from the Fox movies to allow them to appear in future Disney properties movies.
But there's no Fox.
Right. So that's
Yeah, but that's a really interesting idea, that Deadpool at first thinks he's the one that can save that studio and keep the comic books movies going, and they say, no, it's Wolverine. That's the one that can keep this thing going. So if you want to keep
which
making these,
it's true. Like even though Deadpool was successful, Logan is the one that got the most critical praise, I think.
so that's you mean the one that takes place when all the superheroes have died?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been my favorite of all, but I was informed by other people on a podcast of the Lambcast that was not official canon, and it does not count.
It's my least.
But it's still my favorite one. I think it's brilliant.
I feel like it's the one for people that don't really like superhero movies. So it's like it's so little superhero dynamics and action. It's just like, hey, here's Wolverine. At the end, everything's terrible. It's this cynical kind of, okay, let's break it down. Dystopian Wolverine universe. All the X-Men are gone, and he's just basically an Uber driver, and he's in a crankety, crotchety mood all the time. I don't know. I kind of like more fun in my comic book movies, even if, you know, a big hero makes a sacrifice. I just felt it was so joyless and just, I don't know, drained of all the fun of a Wolverine character. I mean, it's a dude with knives sticking out of his knuckles, and it just felt so ho-hum, and it's bleak, everything's terrible, and I don't know. But I know a lot of people love it.
Did you have to get out your special sock when you saw the yellow uniform?
I did not. I thought it was funny reading that people on set were in tears looking at the costumes. I was more excited about some of the others that we saw during the course of the film. I thought that was really.
I think we've arrived at that point, folks, where we're going to be talking about some of the sudden appearances of other characters in the film that is full of crossovers. So let's go back to that earlier question. If you had a favorite meta moment, Bubba Wheat and Jeffrey both sounded like they had a cameo that related to their favorite moment. Jeffrey, we're going to let you start on that.
Okay, so my first one was seeing Wesley Snipes slowly walk out his blade. I was, I'd known there was a little bit of discord between Snipes and Reynolds, and after their Blade Trinity collaboration, so I had no thought whatsoever of him actually showing up. I mean, there was every rumor running around like, oh yeah, Tom Cruise is going to show up. So it was like, whatever. But actually seeing him on the screen and then interacting, and then that line, they've done 5 or 4 Punisher movies, but there's only one Blade. And then Snipes kind of looks at the camera, and then Deadpool kind of looks at the camera. It's like, yes, you're right. I don't know why we're wasting all this time. It's not like Wesley Snipes is moving so slow he can't kill a few vampires. So I definitely enjoyed that one. And Bubba, was that yours?
No, mine was Channing Tatum Gambit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean that was like in the news for forever. Like that movie was in development hell for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years or something like that. And he was like so on board to play Gambit, and I'm glad that he finally got his opportunity. Although seeing it on screen, I'm not sure if he was intentionally going so over the top because it's Deadpool to make it like ridiculous, and because I don't think that this specific Gambit could have carried a movie. I think maybe if he would have, if he had gone through with the movie and he had toned down that Cajun accent a little bit and got it to something that could sustain a movie through the entire runtime, But I thought I loved him and all the all of his wistful meta comments about I think I was born in the void and I don't even have a universe to go back to.
I didn't think he was that bad, but I definitely with you. Like, I don't think when they announced it, I said, Channing Tatum? I don't know. He didn't strike me as Gambit. I'd look at him more as like the Magic Mike type, not the suave kind of scoundrel that Gambit is in the comic books. But what I was wondering if you were talking about, just based on your avatar, was the Henry Cavill, the Calverine. That was so funny. Like,
that one
so much better.
That one was actually one that I'm sure it was in the news as like a big rumored thing, but that was one that I wasn't expecting. Like, I did not remember that being a possibility. So that kind of threw me. That kind of came out of nowhere. Although I did also love the 5'3" Wolverine too.
Oh, that was hilarious. I said, okay, that's what it would have looked like.
Now you know why they didn't go that direction. Well, I tell you,
more intimidating, shorter.
The moment that got me was probably one that they really expected to sucker people in on, and that was the appearance of Chris Evans in the film. And I'm going, oh, okay. And I'd completely forgotten about Johnny Storm. And when
I saw whenever he showed up, it took me about 5 seconds, and I was like, oh, that's Johnny Storm.
Yeah. And this, and when he threw off the cape and went up in the air, I just laughed because I said, "Yeah, you got me." I hadn't been thinking about that at all, and it was perfect. So there are those moments in these films where there are still things that are going to surprise some people and not surprise others, but it's different for everybody what they're going to get and what they're not going to get. I hadn't heard about Channing Tatum flirting with the Gambit character. That's not one of those things I've been reading about or paying attention to. So the fact that there's that backstory on it makes it so much more entertaining right now. And I think I'd have enjoyed it more if I'd known that. The perfect example of one of those things that I was talking about. The Calverine thing went by so quickly, I just almost missed it.
Channing Tatum came out way back, and I think they were doing either First Class or Days of Future Past at Comic-Con. He was out there, and I feel like it was right next to, I think even Stan Lee was still around at that point. But yeah, it was they were setting him up like he was going to be a huge part of this Fox mutant universe. It was crazy because it was like, really? And it just sat and it kept mentioning it for a while. Then everybody lost interest.
I think it was announced just a few years after, just like 2 or 3 years after Origins came out.
Yeah.
He announced that he was working on it, and then it was finally officially canceled in 2019. So that tells you how long it was in development hell.
In development void.
And, we did have a reference to Blade being the only one. There can only be one. But I would have appreciated a little bit more reference to the Blade that is not going to be in the film. I think I'd have laughed a little bit more if there had been Mahershala Ali reference somewhere. You guys okay with the humor being so violent based? I mean, obviously the film starts off where we're basically getting a necrophilic Deadpool having his way with the remains of Wolverine from Logan. These movies obviously depend. This is an R-rated film. It depends on the violence for a lot of the humor. Did it all work for you for the most part, or did you have any reservations about that?
I mean, this is something that Deadpool has kind of relied on from the beginning, like from that concept short. It's been all about mixing the humor with ultra bloody violence, and I think that is just part of this movie franchise, and I think because of that it works for me, because it's something that's been established. It's just continuing the process, and I think this is it kind of reaches its peak with the multiple Deadpool and Wolverine fights, because that's something where they can throw so much blood around, but it doesn't stop either of the two combatants, like the Honda Odyssey, the aftermath of
Yes,
that.
that's exactly the scene I was thinking of, where basically they're not so much injured as they are just taking a nap afterwards, kind of tired from all of the repeated stabbings, cuttings, pushings, poundings that go on and on and on in the film. And like you said, there were, at least 3 fights between them?
Yeah, I think so.
There's a scene at the end where we get not all the Deadpools in the universe, but all the Deadpools in the universe that have ended up in the void being confronted by our leads in this particular film. And are you guys familiar with? Were these all just inventions of the film, or
No,
are there actual? Is this an actual thing?
Yeah, I'm not a huge comic person, but even I recognize a bunch of the Deadpools, and I'm fairly certain that the vast majority of them are pulled from various comic multiverses. And the one thing that did surprise me a little bit, and I kind of wish that it was a little bit more obvious, because I didn't notice some of the cameos until I went to IMDb afterwards, because Lady Deadpool is played by Blake Lively.
Right.
She just does the voice. She's actually, it was a stunt woman in the costume on screen or whatever. So she just did the voice, but I thought that was funny because I was looking to, it's like, I gotta assume it's Blake Lively because she just did the vocal performance.
And Matthew McConaughey
I was going to
does
say
the Cowboy one, and Nathan Fillion does the voice of the propeller skull head one, I believe.
Deadpool.
Yeah.
I took it. It was enjoyable to me on the level of poking fun at Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh yeah,
into the multiverse.
Because they've
got all these ridiculous kinds of Spider-Man.
But apparently there is, I'm not sure about the Spider-Man Spider-Verse either, because I assume a lot of those, I know that those do exist, right?
Yeah, they're all
it's impossible for all of them to exist. I mean, there's hundreds of them. But I think it works on both. It works both as, they took all these Wolverines from the comics, probably added a lot, but it's also poking fun at Spider-Man into the multiverse. It's poking fun at this multiverse idea, which in the movie they say is getting overdone, and we need to just drop this idea.
Yeah, I was even just having a conversation in one of my group chats about how the whole multiverse idea, the multiverse concept in movies is kind of overdone, and I feel like this is kind of the one that, I don't know if it does it the best, but I feel like this is one of the better ones. I kind of said that this movie is what The Flash tried to be to a certain extent, where that one it wasn't very successful, but I believe that this one is more successful in what it's trying to do. And I do think that the concept of the multiverse as an A story is kind of reaching its peak, and I feel like, I guess that the whole Marvel, the MCU multiverse saga is not quite done yet, but I kind of feel like having the multiverse as the A plot it should be winding itself down, and I feel like, we can have multiverse as a B or a C plot, but I feel like we should be done with multiverse as the A plot.
I think they are almost done with it. One of my favorite lines in the movie was when Deadpool was going, the multiverse is just so tired. It's just been so bad. And I was like, yes, you're absolutely right. Because I think it works in the sense of you're tearing down something. So like when DC did it with Crisis, when you're streamlining and getting rid of a bunch of bulk, sure, that's good. When it's, hey, look, this universe has their own take on Wolverine and their own version of Iron Man. It's like, okay, cool. Like, it's fun for a movie but over the course of like 10, it kind of loses its thing. And I thought this was the case, but the Deadpool core in the comic book came around 2010, and the Spider-Man core, Spider-Verse, started off in 2014. So Deadpool actually beat Spider-Man to that in the comic books, and they're all kind of doing their spin on the Green Lantern core. There's also the Nova core in Marvel. So there's a bunch of mini characters kind of rocking the same look with some variations. And they're all just kind of doing what DC did back in the day. Ironically, with Green Lantern that Ryan Reynolds also started.
Yeah, we got plenty of cross references there. I don't think we got that cross reference. There had to have been a joke that went by that I missed, because that seems like it would have been an obvious thing. We did have a couple of characters that I had not heard of before, we didn't see before. I'm not sure, again, if they exist in the comic book world or if they were inventions for this particular film. Cassandra Nova, apparently the twin sister of Dr. X, Professor X, and also Mr. Paradox. So why don't we take a minute to talk about these two characters and what your impressions of them were, and let's talk about Cassandra, because she's the big bad in the movie, if there is a big bad. Jeffrey, are you okay with this?
Absolutely, yeah, because she's actually a comic book character.
Okay.
Grant Morrison created her as a main villain for the new X-Men, and this is kind of stemming right after Fox debuted their big X-Men and everybody's in their Matrix-inspired attire. So he kind of followed suit with his take on X-Men. But Cassandra Nova got introduced there, Professor X's twin, and the line that they mentioned in the movie about her trying to strangle him out when they were in the womb was accurate for the comic book. So that was really cool. And I thought the actress who played Cassandra was really great in the role. It gave Cassandra that real kind of creepy, eerie thing, especially when she started poking her fingers through people's heads. I thought that really made her an intimidating villain.
Well, definitely the visual on that was awfully startling. But we're back to one of the things that I think is a little bit problematic here. The villain's powers are basically unlimited, and the idea that they have to find some way to limit the powers becomes another one of those plot branches that we were talking about earlier, where you're going off there, and I'm not exactly sure why the villain would hesitate to do some. Took care of Johnny Storm pretty damn quickly. So, why there's hesitation anywhere else, it was unclear to me, except that it's monologuing kind of stuff, that we're going to have to put that off, because there wouldn't be a movie if the villain did what they're capable of doing immediately.
James Bond twist.
Yeah,
You're
it's
not
just
killing James Bond when you have the chance.
exactly. You're doing those kinds of things where it just intuitively seems counterproductive. The other thing.
Well, didn't Deadpool make a joke that they killed off Johnny Storm quickly because they couldn't afford him anymore?
Yes, there's always that kind of reference too. We've got the meta excuse for whatever plot device we've got going here. We can just make a joke about it, which I think that works. I enjoyed that. That was a clever bit. How about what is it, McFadden as Mr. Paradox? You guys know what a paradox is, right? That's where you park your two boats.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite jokes. So I just have to repeat it. It's a dad joke, I know.
That was. I don't remember him from the comic books, but I'm not too familiar about the existence of the TVA in the comic books at all. I do think it's really. I think of all their Disney Plus shows, Loki's probably been hailed as the best one. So I appreciate that they keep making sure that, hey, Loki was our highlight, our shining gem of these Disney Plus shows. Go back and watch it. They even have the new head of the TVA there. So that was cool. Just to show, like, hey, Loki mattered. Some of these other ones might not have, and we'll reference all these characters later. But that's the most important one through the course of this multiverse.
Yeah, I'm another one of those things what I've always worried about, because the TV shows do the same thing that the comic books do. And one of the reservations that I have for getting into it is because once you dive into that end of the pool, you you could drown in it, and there's so many things to deal with, and I don't think I have time to keep up with all those things. I saw the first season of Loki. I know that this character appears in the second season, but I have not seen the second season yet, so it didn't mean as much to me as it would to somebody who's been immersed in all of this. And then, like you guys have said, there are several of these characters that really do exist in, backstories, whether they are in the comic books, whether they're in animated versions of the characters, or some of the more obscure films that and TV shows that once again I'm not familiar with. Some of them I've heard of, but like I said, I hadn't encountered. And it's not essential, people, to know everything to be able to enjoy it. I just sometimes feel like I have to laugh at the joke even though I didn't get it.
Yeah, and I liked all the other cameos that we haven't mentioned too. It was so great to see Jennifer Garner back as Elektra. She looked great, and Toad and Pyro. I was kind of surprised at how big of a role Pyro had, and I thought that he pulled off the role pretty well. I was glad to see him back from X2 and X-Men: The Last Stand. And I was a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, I think it was the right move that Taylor Maine's Sabretooth only just got the 2-minute cameo.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about that we haven't covered yet? Because I'm sure that there's something that you've thought of that I didn't. Because I as I was watching the film, I said, there's a lot here, but I'm not sure what it is that is worth talking about. Tell me what was worth talking about that we haven't covered.
I don't know if this is worth talking about, but it did come to mind as you were talking about the Void and the fights between Hugh Jackman, between Deadpool and Wolverine. And it was one of the things that also, I think, helped sort of the movie fell a little short, is it's very hard to become emotionally involved in a conflict in which neither one can be killed. All they're doing is regenerating every time they hit each other. So how can this conflict ever be resolved, period? So I was seeing these fights and I'm going, well, nobody can win. Where are we going with this? I did want to also jump on my favorite meta moment was also one of yours, Richard, was the revelation that Chris Evans was Johnny Storm. For me, the huge joke is that everyone thought he was going to be Captain America. And as soon as he comes out as Johnny Storm, it's like this huge, disappointing sigh entered the theater, just like it does for Deadpool. He said, well, we got, because Fantastic Four has been one of the least favorites of all the Marvel movies.
They have struggled with that. They had the two that I don't know if they worked well, but obviously one got a sequel, and then they've done it twice more, haven't they? And neither one of those was a success.
No, just one.
It's literally every 10 years they come out with one, like almost on the dot, and then they had one extra one in there too, because you got 94 with the unproduced Corman one, 2005 with the Tim Story, 2015 with the Fan 4 stick, and then 2025 is the new Marvel MCU one.
All right, next year. What else? Anything else that we should be talking about before we finish up here?
I mean, it's not integral to the plot, but I really enjoyed the credits. I loved the look back at all the non-Disney behind the scenes stuff, and I appreciated that the fact that they did throw in a couple, very brief moments from Fan Four Stick in there. I thought that was kind of a fun little nod, and also just a lot of the stuff from the 2000 behind the scenes of X-Men. I thought it felt like a nice tribute to the Fox Marvel universe. Although I was kind of disappointed, now that I think about it, that they didn't have anything from any of the Punisher movies.
Were those under that? I thought they were under another umbrella.
Oh, that's probably why. Now that I think about it.
Well, I kind of like the fact that it's not just a tribute to the films there, but also to the studio that basically is a shell of what it used to be, and it's just a Disney tool at this particular point. I don't know why they jettisoned Touchstone and replaced it with 20th Century. It's basically just a different imprimatur that they can put on their films. I'm not sure what it gets them, but 20th Century Fox has gone the way of the dodo, and the fact that they were essential in kind of getting the comic book universe started with those first X-Men films. It was fortuitous that it was timing with the Sony films also, which we get almost no reference to, understandably. All right then. Well, if we're all covered here, let me just say that those of you who have stuck around listening to this, you can hear that we are all found things to be enthusiastic about in Deadpool and Wolverine, and I'm sure that most of you didn't need any prompting from us to see the movie, but hopefully you'll have some opinions that you'll be willing to share with us at some point. Feel free to add those to comments on the post here. We're going to take a quick break to hear from a fellow Lamb Podcasting Network show, and then we're going to be back with some rants, raves, and reviews.
Listen up, ladies and gentlemen. Our podcast, The One-Armed Minute, will cover all 130 minutes of the classic 1993 action thriller, The Fugitive, 3 minutes per week.
Average length of each episode, including guests, is approximately 30 minutes, giving us a total expected running time of 65 hours.
So what we want out of each and every one of you is to listen along with us for the next year to our hard target search through every plot detail,
character breakdown,
guest segment,
movie trope, Star Trek reference, and corny joke in each minute.
Episodes go up starting on January 1st, so please stay subscribed and recommend this podcast to all your movie-loving friends.
Your podcast name is The One-Armed Minute. Now go listen.
We're back, and it's time for our rants, raves, and reviews of the week. Howard, what have you got to rant about, to rave about, or review for us this week?
Well, I'll start out with a little rant that sort of leads to somewhat of a rave. Over the past month, here in Humboldt, Texas, it's Humboldt, not humble. We've had our power and Wi-Fi knocked out twice, first by Beryl Hurricane and then by the Microsoft global outage, which took like 5 or 6 days to fix in my neighborhood. So in the meantime, I could still use my phone and get on the internet on the phone. And I tend to watch TV to fall asleep. So I've been going to YouTube a lot. And I'm not sure I would say getting into, but enjoying radio dramas. They can be a really good time, and some of the ones I'll recommend, especially for movie people, is the Lux radio hour, which from the 30s up to the 50s, I think they have a dramatization of the birds. They do like 50-minute adaptations of movies. There's like 5 or 6 Hitchcock. There's all sorts of film noirs. There's everything they adapted once a week. Also, the Jack Benny show is absolutely hysterical at times. And it should be noted that England has never stopped making radio dramas. And they'll have contemporary things and things done very recently or much later. They have a great Star Wars triple that was made at the time of Star Wars. The first one is a very controversial scene where Princess Leia is tortured by Darth Vader. That's not in the movie, but is in the radio show. So, I've just had a good time doing that. It's helped me get through this lack of being able to watch my shows or movies on TV. So, kind of a rave. Not the most exciting, but it's there.
That's cool. I'm always looking for stuff to spend some time on. I've gotten sucked into some other things recently, watching reaction videos to people listening to music that they're not familiar with.
Those can be great.
Yeah.
Those can be really, what makes me feel good about that is they're usually listening to music of my generation
Exactly.
from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I'm going, young people can enjoy that music if they give themselves a chance.
Yes.
And they do.
But the radio show thing seems like it would be
great. The Who's
great.
on First reaction videos are also great.
Yes. Excellent. Jeffrey, have you got something to rant about, something to rave about, something to review?
I'm going to rant about Tyler Perry's Divorce in the Black. I finally watched it, and I'm not quite sure why I decided to give up 2 free hours of my life to watch this. He's just so odd of a filmmaker where I grew up and, during the summers when there was a break in camps, I'd be over with my grandparents. My grandma would have on the soap operas. And I don't understand why he makes these movies feel like 8 seasons of a soap opera in 2 hours, where it's just take one plot and just go from there. But he just tries to throw in as many ridiculous storylines as possible. And they just don't even make for coherent films, where it's just like, okay, I understand where you're going with here. It's just all over the place, and that's just what he likes to do. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure why I watched it. I don't know. I guess I had some time to kill, and it almost did.
It's killed your will to continue doing so.
Oh, yeah. It was special.
Is that a current film, or is that something from before?
No, it's on Netflix right now. I think it aired about I don't know, let's say debuted on Netflix about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And I really watched it.
Yeah, I'm. It's not on my radar. I wasn't ever going to be watching it, and now you have eliminated any reason for me to even think about it.
Oh yeah, just don't even think about it.
Bubba Wheat, how about you?
I think I'll go with a review. I haven't been watching a ton of stuff, but I'm starting to prep for the next season of my podcast, and I'm doing a sampling of some British sci-fi, and for whatever reason, instead of catching up on Doctor Who, which is kind of the main focus, I decided to start watching a Doctor Who spin-off, the Sarah Jane Adventures, and that's been kind of fun. It's interesting. It definitely seems like it's aimed at a younger audience, which is kind of funny because the main character, Sarah Jane, is an older actress, but they throw in some teens, so it's Sarah Jane and like 2 or 3 teenagers doing like mini Doctor Who-esque adventures on Earth, and it's been kind of fun. I just finished the first season, which I think was 11 or 12 episodes, and I'm enjoying it. I think there was three or five seasons. I think 5 seasons maybe. And that's been pretty fun. I don't have too much, but yeah, there's Sarah Jane Adventures, and it's currently streaming on Max right now.
Good deal. Good deal. So Bubba Wheat and Howard have recommendations, and Jeffrey has a warning for us. I'm gonna end up with the recommendations category also, and it just is coincidental. Next week's Lambcast episode is a draft on 1984 films, and there's a reason that we do 1984 films, because that year was rich in great movies, as I coincidentally discovered again this last week. Last week's show was about The Last Starfighter, which was in 1984. On Monday night, I went to a screening of The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, which was a 1984 film. Wednesday night, I saw John Carpenter's Starman, which is a 1984 film. And earlier this month, I saw Body Double from Brian De Palma, which is a 1984 film. I'm just having a good time revisiting that year from 40 years ago. I can count. It's math. And it's just been a lot of fun. Like I said, I saw Starman when it came out, and I've seen it several times since. It's been maybe a decade since I watched it, and seeing it in a theater, I just thought, this is a really good film that I don't think of as being essential, but it's another one of those films from 1984 that you go, this is a reason that was such a great year for movies. And so this is both a pat on the back for my recognition and timing on this, and also a promo for next week's show. So that's my rave for the week. It just happened to be coincidental that it was going on at the same time we're getting ready for the next Lambcast. Well, let me give everybody a chance to talk about what they're doing online before we close up the show here. Bubba Wheat, you mentioned that you're prepping your next podcast endeavor. You want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, currently my oldest running podcast that's still going right now is my It's Time to Rewind podcast that covers time loop movies and TV shows, typically one loop at a time. And starting in October, I'm going to be starting my 6th season, which I'm calling Red Who. And I'm sampling various BBC sci-fi shows and really focusing on the two biggest ones, Red Dwarf on the comedy side and Doctor Who on the, more dramedy side. And I'm going to be going through one episode per season of Red Dwarf and one episode or arc per Doctor of Doctor Who. And it's going to kind of end or more or less wrap up with the I think 2023 New Year's special, the Jodie Whittaker Eve of the Daleks, which is really the one of the only kind of true Groundhog Day-esque loop episodes, and I'm going to be breaking that down one loop at a time over 9 episodes, which is kind of the typical format of that podcast. And also my other podcast, Fight Club Minutes. I've been going through the movie Fight Club 1 minute at a time, 3 minutes a week, and it is very close to wrapping up. As of this recording, there are 10 episodes or 10 minutes of the movie left. So that is coming to an end. I just recorded the final episode yesterday. So that has been an incredibly fun endeavor for me. That movie is extremely dense. It really lends itself to the minute by minute format. There is so much going on in every single minute of that movie that has been so much to talk about. I've learned so much. I've been covering that movie for a full year. I started recording in June of last year, and it's nice to finally finish that, and it's been great. I've talked to 4 small bit actors that appeared in the movie. Bob Stevenson, that played the airport security guard near the beginning. Mike Wiles, who plays the bartender in the Halo neck brace, and then two of the officers, Van Quattro and Marcus Redmond, that are near the end of the movie that threaten to take the narrator's balls, and so that's just been a fun experience, and it's just about to wrap up. So check that out, Fight Club Minute.
The dedication that it takes to do these shows that people do, the minute by minute shows, I admire that. I have no stamina for such an endeavor, but I appreciate when people do, and it's always fun to check in, even if you aren't going to be there for all 172 minutes of whatever film is being covered. You can often find 10 minutes worth of stuff that you go, I'm really glad I listened to that. So thank you for promoting that and reminding us that it's there. Jeffrey, what are you up to?
So on my podcast, Lyles Movie Files, I am going to be breaking down all this big news from Marvel Studios with the return of Robert Downey Jr. No more Kang. We're all in the Doctor Doom era. And the Russo brothers being back and what that means for Marvel, not just from the quality of their movies, but on the box office front too. I think they're kind of positioned to do some big things again. So looking forward to exploring and analyzing what all that means, and just continuing to do movie reviews over on my website, lylesmoviefiles.com. And with the Acolyte mercifully ended, I've got to find a new TV show to tackle and start reviewing.
I like that reference, that it mercifully ended. I haven't watched that show, and nobody I've heard from has given me any reason to.
No, do not. Put that right alongside Tyler Perry's Divorce in the Black.
Howard, I know that you have been behind a little bit on pop art, and of course the outages, I'm sure, haven't helped at all. Do you have anything on the horizon, or you got something that you do want us to turn to, even if you don't?
No, generally just for people who have not been listening to my podcast, use this as an opportunity to maybe check it out and catch up on some past episodes to see if you like what I'm doing. Hopefully, again, I am feeling much better, so hopefully I will be starting up again soon. I will also say that I was a guest on the Fight Club Minute, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing it. I love doing those, and I'm supposed to be on a podcast of the Casablanca Minute by Minute, which I guess I'll be very first. I want to say I bit the bullet and I said, yeah, I'll take the first couple of minutes.
I love the first couple of minutes of Casablanca. That little narrative exposition there, perfect.
Yeah,
you're gonna have fun.
I agree. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't want to do openings because it's like credits and this and that and this. But I think doing the opening to Casablanca would be a lot of fun.
And wait, and wait, and wait.
Yes.
It's going to be good. I'm sure you're going to have a great time. Over on Kirkham A Movie A Day, just the usual. If I see it at a theater, you're going to get a post about it. And I've been seeing a lot of movies in theaters. Most of them are classic films. I've seen a few new films, caught up on Twisters and Long Legs, and I have to do my review of Deadpool and Wolverine still. But there's a lot of content there. The thing, though, that I do want to make sure that people pay attention to is the video version of this podcast, because I do spend time trying to put it together, make it interesting, integrate things that people talk about, find some visual reference to add to what our discussion involved. I don't know how well it'll go this week because I'm not sure what the visual content will be for Deadpool and Wolverine, except for the separate stories. But I'll figure it out. We'll do something that makes it interesting. But those of you who are listening to this, make sure to check out the video as well as the podcast, because there's a lot of fun to be had there. I want to thank you guys for joining us this week. This has been, the movie was a lot of fun. The discussion that we've had here has been great. And I'm looking forward to doing this again in another 10 years. Next time there's a Fantastic Four movie. Actually, I'm sure that we'll be doing it plenty of times between now and then. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.
It's